Let me read to you a passage from the 5th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, verses 1 to 12. It's the Gospel that can be used for what we might call the Day of the Nation. For instance, in Australia there is Australia Day on January the 26th, and many countries have their national day that is celebrated by the nation. St. Matthew writes in chapter 5 verses 1 to 12, "Now when he saw the crowds, Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, 'Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you.'" That's from Matthew chapter 5 verses 1 to 12. We think of the Fatherland. Generally man has seen God, has connected with, indeed as the source of, the blessings he enjoys. Man is generally religious. When Europe emerged from what is usually called the Dark Ages, it had a religion, and that religion was Catholicism. Its ethos was Catholic. So obvious was this that European societies looked to the papacy as the final arbiter. In 1076, Pope Gregory VII excommunicated Henry, the Holy Roman Emperor in Germany, together with his ecclesiastical supporters, and released his subjects from their oath of allegiance in accordance with the usual political procedures of the age. Pope Gregory was beatified by Gregory XIII in 1584 and canonized in 1728 by Pope Benedict XIII. The activities of the papacy and of national rulers who interfered deeply in the affairs of the Church showed the Catholic character of European culture. The point here, though, is that God was part of life and its blessings. 700 years later, after Gregory VII, the religious character of European culture was utterly different. The United States of America, not yet proclaimed as such, was Protestant in principle. When the Congress of the 13 United States of America issued its unanimous Declaration of Independence on July the 4th, 1776, the leading personalities were deists. Their professed religion was not the revealed religion of Jesus Christ, but the religion of reason and of God the Creator. By this time, the Australian continent had been discovered by the British seaman James Cook, and soon after the colony began as a British jail. While the established Anglican Church was set up in the new colony, and while provision was made for Christian practice and worship among prisoners and free settlers, many of its leading personalities were little more than deists. Australia hardly had a religious beginning. There has always been ample scope for religious practice in Australia, and indeed there has been vigorous religious practice. But the nation was not founded on a religious principle as such, in the way Catholic Europe had been, or even the Britain of those same dark ages. The modern age is suspicious of religion. Typically, in his history, man understands happiness and prosperity to be connected with God and religion, but typically contemporary man does not. While there has been a great gain in grasping the fact that the world has its own laws that bring or threaten prosperity, the grand mistake has been to disassociate God from the world and its laws. God is now deemed to be unnecessary. The world can carry on by itself with its laws. If we can but understand and harness them, prosperity and well-being will be ours. Religion is now a nuisance, a distraction, a bit ridiculous, and even somewhat harmful to man. It leaves him benighted. To take but one example, the culture and national life of Australia, it would be an embarrassment to mention publicly such entirely personal and subjective matters as God, sin, and the doing of his will. Prosperity and happiness have nothing essentially to do with God, for God is but an option depending on personal taste or temperament. Of course, one must be polite about all this, and so religion is not publicly attacked. It is ignored and marginalized. The point being made here is that the greatest need for such a country is the general acknowledgement and recognition of the being of God, and more specifically, the being of the God of historical revelation. The most notable difference between the modern world and the world of man across the ages turns on religion. God was once present, even if not very influential. Now he is typically absent. He is regarded as a non-entity. The tragic thing here is that God is the most real of all realities, and therefore to that extent our modern age is out of touch. The greatest service we can do to our country, and the greatest blessing we can possibly pray for on behalf of our country, is that it come to recognize the reality of God. If God is recognized and accepted, his commandments will be attended to. Despite all the discussion about the foundations of morality and the moral life, in practical terms, what will lead a man to a moral life if he has no realization of God? What can lead him to real, let alone heroic goodness? It ought to be obvious that a true and objective religious life must be the greatest boon to a country. Man's greatest need is for God. In saying that, we are speaking of religion. On a day when we think of the gift given to us of a fatherland, we naturally think of our love for country. But how is this love to be expressed? What good do we hope for on behalf of our country? In a secular culture, we think of temporal goods, economic, political, social benefits. We tend not to think of the fundamental good, which is recognition of God and the disposition to please him. Our gospel today that I read earlier sets forth in the Beatitudes a plan of human living that has been revealed by the Saviour of the world. The Beatitudes make God the centerpiece of the human life. This is what ought to be the foundation of culture and the bond uniting a country. Let every disciple of Christ so live as to bear witness to Jesus and his teaching that is encapsulated in our gospel passage that I read earlier from Matthew chapter 5 verses 1 to 12. It is by this path that a country will truly flourish.